Hello dear students, welcome back to a YouTube class. So from previous few sessions we started to study about your overview of computer chapter, that is chapter number 1. So till now we had studied about your evolution, block diagram, characteristics and the introduction part. So in the last session we were studying about your evolution of computer, where we had seen the different calculating tools. As the technology has been changed, as the invention has been changed, in the same way we had seen the different calculating machines. Okay, so we had studied the abacus, very first device, which is also called as the first calculating machine for counting. This device has been invented by the Chinese people for the calculation purpose. After abacus, next we had studied about your Napier bones. This Napier bones has been invented by John Napier, by a Scottish mathematician. He has developed it mainly for the multiplication purpose. And the next device we found is the slide rule. It has been invented by William Oughtred, which is based on the distance from the starting point of the rule is directly proportional to the logarithm of the numbers printed on the rule. So the mainly it is used to perform your calculations of multiplication and division in the format of your addition and subtraction respectively using your logarithm method. After your the slide rule, we again studied about adding machine Pascaline, which has been developed by a French philosopher called as Blaise Pascal. He has developed this mechanical calculator. We can call it as the first mechanical calculator also. Then, so here using this we can perform the calculations. We can do addition, subtraction, division and multiplications of the numbers as big as the thousands. Next we have studied is Leibniz calculator. It has been developed by a mathematician Gottfried Leibniz, and it has been developed to perform the arithmetic operations like adding, subtracting, multiplying and dividing the numbers. After that we had seen the Jacquard loom, which has been developed by Joseph Marie Jacquard, and it takes the first memory device, that is read only memory. And after that we studied about the difference engine and the analytical engine. This difference engine and the analytical engine has been developed by Charles Babbage. He is a British mathematician and even an engineer. He invented this difference engine and the analytical engine. The invention of these invention has given the base to your computer development, the computer design. For that reason, Charles Babbage is also known as father of computer. After these devices, we studied the last divide, that is Hall-Reed tabulating machine. The Hall-Reed tabulating machine has been invented by an American called as Herman Hall-Reed. He invented this machine, which is called as counting machine, to count the population of the USA. To count the population of your USA. Next we had studied about a lady who is called as a first programmer. Lady Ada Lovelace, she is called as the first programmer. She has written a first program for Charles Babbage analytical engine. From then onwards, the programming concept has been started. From then onwards, the programming concept has been started. For that reason, she is called as the first programmer. So these are all the points you have to remember. As I told, the many 1-mark questions you will get it from these evolutions. If you will not get any 1-mark question on these evolutions for your theory exams, then you may get 2 marks and 3 marks question for the explanation of any one devices. Then, so study these devices in detail, who invented, for what purpose invented. Some devices are called as the first calculating machine, first counting machine, first programmer and all, each point we have. So those all points you have to remember. Fine. So today we are studying about a new topic that is called as generations of computer. That is called as generation of your computer. The evolution of your electronic computers over a period of time can be traced effectively by dividing this period into various generations. Starting from your 1940 till today, there was change in your technology, there was change in your machines, there was change in the invention. As the technology has been changed, like that the computer invention has been changed. Then, so these all the eras has been divided into different parts, and those are named as the generation. Each generation is characterized by a major technological development that fundamentally changed the way computers operated, and these help to develop the smaller, economical, powerful, efficient, and reliable devices. Then, so we'll study about the generations of your computer. You may get a 5 marks question to explain your generations of your computer. You may get a direct 5 marks question to explain about your generations of computer. There are totally 5 generations of your computer. The question can be explain the generations of computer, then you have to explain all the 5 generations of your computer, or else they will tell you to explain any 2 or the 3 of your generations. If any other question has been asked for 5 marks, then they may ask any one generation explanation for maybe 3 marks or 2 marks. So you have to study these generations for in detail for maybe 2 marks, 3 marks, or 5 marks. Sometimes you may get a knowledge based question on this generation for 1 marks also. Done? So now we'll study in detail relating to your generations. So depending on the development of the technology, the generations of the computers are classified into 5 generations. Which technology you used, what is the capacity of your computer, how the computer is looked, what is the speed of your computer, what is the storage capacity of your computer. Based on that each component or each point, your generations of the computer has been classified into 5 generations, and those 5 generations are named as first generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation, and fifth generation. So totally we have 5 generations named in a sequence: first generation of your computer, second generation of computer, third generation of computer, fourth generation of computer, and the last one is fifth generation of your computer. The first generation of computer starts in the era 1940 to till 1956. The second generation of the computer era starts from 1956 to 1963. The third generation of the computer starts from the era 1964 till 1971, and your fourth generation of your computer starts from the era 1971 to till 1980, and the fifth generation starts from 1980 until today, and in the future what all the invention and the change happens in your computer all together will be kept in your fifth generation of the computer. Fine. So just remember, name of the generations are first generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation, and fifth generation. Remember the era of each generation. 1940 to 56 is your first generation. 1956 to 63 is your second generation. 1964 to 1971 is your third generation. 1971 to 1980 is your fourth generation, and 1980 till today is your fifth generation. So in your exam you get a question for 5 marks is explain the generation of your computer, then you have to explain all these 5 generations. Or else they will ask you to explain, if the question is for 3 marks, they will ask you to explain any 2 of these generations. For example, they will tell you to explain the first generation and second generation, or else they will ask you to explain like third and fourth, or fourth and fifth, like that. If they are asking it for 2 marks, they will ask you to explain any one of these generations. Any one of these generations. So study all the generation in detail. Anyhow, they will ask one question definitely on your generations, so you will be able to answer it. Fine. So the first we'll start studying about your first generation of the computer. First we'll study about the first generation of your computer. So the first generation of your computer starts in the year 1940 and it was there till 1956. It started from 1940 and it was there till 1956. In your first generation of your computer, they started to use vacuum tubes as the basic component. So which is the basic component used in your first generation of the computer is vacuum tubes. Remember these all the basic components used in your each generation, because you may get a 1 marks question which technology is used in that particular generation or which is the basic component used in that particular generations. So here in your first generation we used is vacuum tubes as a basic components. We can call it as the technology used in your first generation is vacuum tube also. Fine. The next feature of your first generation we have is the speed of these computers was very slow. The speed of these computers was very slow. The storage capacity is very less, in only few kbs we can able to store the data, and these computers were large in size. These computers were large in size. These were large in size that occupied a lot of space. We can just say that an entire room was required to maintain only one computer. An entire room. So just imagine how much the space it was required to maintain your first generation computer. These first generation computers size was very large, the speed was very less, and the storage capacity was also very less. These 3 points you have to remember about your first generation computers. The speed is very slow, the storage capacity is very less, and the size is very large. Now, how to start this first generation computers? So what you have to do is, you have to start heating the vacuum tubes. You have to start heating the vacuum tubes. The vacuum tubes will reach certain temperature. When it reaches certain temperature, that time your system starts working. Means the continuous high voltage electricity supply should be there to heat, to generate the heat between your first generation computer. And maintaining this temperature was very difficult because it produces the enormous amount of heat. It produces the enormous amount of heat, and they were very expensive to operate because it consumes large amount of electricity. And we need two teams. One team is to operate your system, another team is to just maintain that electricity supply, to maintain that temperature of the system. We should not allow the vacuum tubes to be overheated. If it is overheated, then your computers caused the malfunctions. It stopped working or some circuits may burn. Done? So the maintenance of temperatures was very much important in your first generation computer. Here, your first generation computers operated only on machine language. We were not able to instruct it using your English-like statements. In your first generation, that is from 1940 to till 1956, what all the computers we used, all were operated based on your machine language, that is only binary number systems. Only binary number system. These machines won't understand the English-like statements. This machine won't understands the English-like statements. It understands only machine language. The input, how to enter the input into your first generation. The input was based on your punched cards, paper tapes, and the output was obtained through your printout. There was no any keyboard, there was no any mouse. So we have to enter the input through your punched cards or else through your paper tapes, and the output is through your printout. There was no any monitor also. So input and output devices were not there in your first generation computers. So the input work is done through either the punch cards or the paper tapes, and the output was obtained through your printouts. Then some of the examples of your first generation computers we have is, the first one is ENIAC, ENIAC, and the second one is UNIVAC, UNIVAC. Remember the expansion of each, you may get it for 1 marks question. What is ENIAC stands for? ENIAC stands for Electronic Numerical Integrator and Calculator. ENIAC stands for Electronic Numerical Integrator and Calculator. Where UNIVAC stands for Universal Automatic Computer. UNIVAC stands for Universal Automatic Computer. So these all are the two computers designed and developed in the era of first generation. So what all the points you have to remember about your first generation is, the first generation computers used the basic components is your vacuum tubes. The speed of these generations computers were very slow. The storage capacity was very less. And these computers are large in size. It occupies huge amount of the space. A lot of space will be occupied. Done? The generations computers operate only on your machine language. The input is entered through maybe the punched cards or your paper tapes, and the output is obtained using your printouts. Some of the example of your first generation computers are ENIAC and UNIVAC. ENIAC stands for Electronic Numerical Integrator and Calculator, and the second one is UNIVAC, that is Universal Automatic Computer. So these are all the points you have to remember relating to your first generation features. What all points you have to write is this vacuum tube, then the speed you have to tell, storage capacity you have to tell, the size you have to tell, which language we use you have to tell, how we enter the input and output you have to remember, and some of the examples you have to remember relating to your first generation computer. So this was an example of your first generation computer. There was a big laboratory where we are maintaining only one computer. See, this is only one computer, and this is the example of your vacuum tubes. Actually, the size of vacuum tubes here are displayed small, but these will be of bigger in size. So this picture shows you the first generation of computer, how it used to look it. And this is the vacuum tubes, how this will used to look. Then next we'll see about ENIAC. Here ENIAC stands for Electrical Numerical Integrator and Computer, which you can call it as Electrical Numerical Integrator Computer, because here we are used to perform the calculations. We used to perform the calculations of numerical and integrated values. That is the arithmetic operations we used to perform. So the name has given Electrical Numerical Integrated and Computer. Then it used a word of 10 decimal digits instead of binary ones like previous automated calculator and the computer. So in automated calculators and the other computers, we use there only few binary digits, but here the size has been changed. That is, a word means how many, 1 byte we had used, that you can say 10 decimal digits we had used in that. 10 decimal digits we had used in that. The next computer, one more first generation computer we have is EDVAC. Just remember the expansion of EDVAC. EDVAC stands for Electronic Discrete Variable Automatic Computer. EDVAC stands for Electronic Discrete Variable Automatic Computer. Done? So it was to be a vast improvement upon your ENIAC. ENIAC was the basic. The next few extra features has been added, and we got a new computer than your ENIAC, that is your EDVAC. Here, two person, that is Mutchakli and Eckert, started working from the 2 years before the invention of your ENIAC, and they got the new idea and they invented the computer that is named as EDVAC. EDVAC stands for Electronic Discrete Variable Automatic Computer. This idea was to have the program for computer stored inside the computers. From EDVAC, we started to use the concept of storage. We started to use the concept of storage into your computer. So this is about your EDVAC. The next computer of your first generation we have is Universal Automatic Computer. We have is Universal Automatic Computer. This was the first commercial computer produced by United States. What happens here is your ENIAC, EDVAC has been used by the engineers or the research people. But the human being, the common human being or the business person also wants to use the computers, and the first commercial used computer has been developed in your first generation by United States, and it has been given the name as UNIVAC, where the UNIVAC stands for Universal Automatic Computer. UNIVAC stands for Universal Automatic Computer. With this ENIAC, EDVAC and UNIVAC, we have one more is EDSAC. We have one more is EDSAC. The EDSAC stands for Electronic Delay Storage Automatic Calculator. Electronic Delay Storage Automatic Calculator. It has been developed by John von Neumann. John von Neumann. In England they had developed. Done. So remember these 4 first generation computers: ENIAC, EDVAC, UNIVAC and EDSAC. ENIAC stands for Electrical Numerical Integrator and Computer. EDVAC stands for Electronic Discrete Variable Automatic Computer. UNIVAC stands for Universal Automatic Computer, and EDSAC stands for Electronic Delay Storage Automatic Calculator. These all the 4 first generations computer. Fine. So remember what all the points you have to know about your first generation is. These all the features. That is the first thing, which component or which technique we used in your first generation is vacuum tubes. The speed is very slow, the storage capacity was very less, and the computers are large in size. The first generation computers operated only on your machine language. The input is based on your punched cards or paper tapes, and the output was obtained by printouts. Some of the examples of your first generation computers are ENIAC, UNIVAC, EDVAC and EDSAC. ENIAC stands for Electrical Numerical Integrator Computer. Just change it. It is not electronic, it is electrical. UNIVAC, Universal Automatic Computer. EDSAC is Electronic Delay Storage Automatic Calculator. And EDVAC is Electronic Discrete Variable Automatic Computer. So these are all the points you have to remember relating to your first generation of the computer. Next we'll study about your second generation of computer. There were some disadvantages in your first generation computer. That is, the size was very big, the speed is very less, and the storage capacity is also very less. So to overcome with these all the disadvantages, we started the new inventions, and in your second generation, rather than using the vacuum tubes, we started to use transistors. So because of the use of these transistors, there was the invention in your computer era, and the next era or the next generation of the computer started from the year 1956 to till 1963. So this era is called as second generation of your computer from 1956 to till 1963. So which technology we used in second generation? We used transistors in place of vacuum tubes. Then as you use the transistors in place of your vacuum tubes, the size of the computer has decreased. The size has been decreased. How the size has been decreased is, I can just tell you, is that in your first generation of the computers, a big room or a big laboratory was required to maintain. Okay, but here in your second generation, only 1/4 of the room has been occupied. Suppose this is your one room, 1/4 of that room was enough to maintain your second generation computer. So that much of the size has been reduced in your second generation of the computer. I will study about the features of your second generation. So in your second generation, we use transistors in place of the vacuum tubes. These machines were much faster, more reliable than your first generation computer, that we call it as earlier machines. Okay, as the size has been reduced, the speed has been increased. The speed has been increased. This generation's computer generates less heat. Vacuum tubes were generating more heat. Here the transistor generates less heat and consumed less electricity, as if you compare it to with your first generation computers. In second generation computers also, we used punched cards for input, and we used to take the output through the printouts. We used to take the output through the printouts. In your second generation computers, we use machine language and assembly language. So what happens here? In your first generation, everything is instructed using only machine language. But here, rather than machine language, we started to study about your assembly language. Means we started to give the instructions using assembly language. What happens here in your assembly level language or in assembly language? Your instructions are not in only binary numbers, not in only machine language. It is the mixed with the English-like statements and the machine language. So rather than telling everything in your machine language, that is in the combination of your binary numbers, few English-like words are used. Few English-like words are used, and such words are called as mnemonics. Such words are called as mnemonics, and that language is called as assembly language. That language is called as assembly language. So you have to remember in your second generation is the technology we use is transistors. The speed is very fast. We can rely on your second generation computers. It generates less heat if you compare with your first generation. And two more points you have to remember is the storage capacity has been increased and the size has been decreased of your second generation computers if you compare with your first generation computer. The language which you used in your first generation was machine language, and the language we used to communicate in your second generation is assembly language. The second generation computers also used punch cards for inputs, and the output was through your printouts. Next point you have to remember here is the computer stored the instructions in the memory, which moved from the magnetic drum to the magnetic core technology. So here the storage devices started using. In your second generation of the computer, we started using the storage devices, that is the magnetic drums and the magnetic core technology we started using. The examples of your first generations we had seen is ENIAC, EDVAC, EDSAC and UNIVAC. Similarly, some of the examples of your second generation computers we have is IBM 1620, IBM 7094, CDC, that is Control Data Corporation 1604, 3600 and UNIVAC 1108. So these numbers are nothing but the model numbers or the serial numbers. The IBM, CDC, these all are the companies, and the machines has been developed and designed by those companies. So the company has given its name. IBM designed that computer, so it has been named as IBM 1620, IBM 7094, CDC 1604 and 3600, UNIVAC 1108. Like that the name has been given for your second generation of the computers. So I'll show you the diagram of your second generation computer. So this is the diagram of your second generation computer, which the size has been reduced if you compare with your first generation of the computer. Done. So in your first generation of the computers, as we were using vacuum tubes, the large laboratory was required to maintain only one single computer. Here, rather than using the vacuum tubes, we are using the transistors, so the size has been decreased. The speed has been increased and the storage capacity also has been increased. Done? So these are all the features you have to remember about your first generation of the computers and the second generation of your computer. So the main point you have to remember is the years from where it started and where it has ended, the technology which we used, the speed, size and the storage capacity, the language which we used, how we started to give the input and output, and then you also remember some of the examples. Okay, these all the points compulsorily have to cover in the explanation. Done? So today I am covering only the first generation and the second generation. The third, fourth and fifth we'll see in the next session. If you have any doubts relating to your first generation and the second generation of the computers, let me know. I'll clarify all your doubts. So in the next generation, I'll do a little revision on your first and second, then only I'll move to the third, fourth and fifth generation. Thank you.